George Orwell's Orwellian satire, 1984, compels readers to confront the intricacies of the human condition through exposing the oppressive outcomes of totalitarian regimes on individual power, truth, and freedom. Composed after World War II, Orwell reveals the ideological transgressions of totalitarian regimes upon collective identity through mirrorings of Stalinist Russia in his writing, specifically the deliberate distortions of truth through fabricated history and exploitations of the NKVD as a form of control. Considering this context, Orwell articulates how repressive power structures and panoptictic surveillance vanquish individuality through ideological dominance, positioning the manipulation of truth as a tool of subjugation, eradicating personal identity until autonomy exists only in memory. Ultimately, the effectiveness of Orwell's dystopian satire lies not simply in the failure to resist autocratic power, but in its representation of totalitarian regimes exploiting language and the individual ambivalence arising from the erasure of collective memory and personal autonomy. Orwell positions belonging as a human need that totalitarian power manipulates, destructing connections into mechanisms of power by replacing group identity with submission to exalt power. Orwell highlights this disposition through allegorical elements that parallel Stalin's cult of personality, positioning Big Brother as an authoritative figure to be worshipped. The omnipresent, dramaticized slogan, "Big Brother is watching you," acts as a metonymy for the party that personalizes a faceless regime in order to mask oppression beneath the distorted offering of belonging, conveying how panoptictic surveillance is utilized by totalitarian controls to induce fear upon individuals. Orwell's protagonist, Winston Smith, who exists in constant ambivalence between recognition and erasure, is positioned as the embodiment of the psychological tension of living under totalitarian abuse. Nothing was your own except the few cubic centimeters inside your skull. The clinical metaphor, few cubic centimeters, highlights the diminutive space left for autonomy under control of the party, ultimately revealing that with individuality annihilated, to belong means to be controlled. Furthermore, Orwell's Orwellian satire of Newspeak reveals the immense power of language, as the party systematically eradicates the individual capacity to connect beyond intradation. Emphasized by Syme's line, "We shall make it thought crime literally impossible, because there will be no words in which to express it." By presenting language as a political weapon, Orwell's didactic purpose reveals how language shapes identity, and when manipulated, so too is connection, positioning diction as a symbol of power. In summary, Orwell exposes how totalitarian control manipulates individuality, thought, and language through power in order to eradicate belonging, blurring the line between cohesion and submission. Through the party's manipulations of truth as a mechanism of ideological oppression, Orwell exhibits how when truth and falsehoods become indistinguishable, the only control individuals hold over their autonomy is the fragile domain of memory. The paradoxical statement, to know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies, exposes the psychological intradation imposed upon individuals under totalitarian control, in which paradoxes are normalized to collapse logical reasoning, emphasized by the juxtaposition between Orwell's motif of truthfulness and lies. Moreover, Orwell extends this motif to the falsification of history, paralleling Stalin's propaganda by fabricating historical events. The past was erased, the erasure was forgotten, the lie became truth. Through this, Orwell unveils the party's cynical manipulation of collective memory, systematically blurring the line between truth and falsehood to condition individuals to accept fabrications without question. Furthermore, Orwell's construction of passive tone and lack of pronouns removes agency, positioning the party's oppression as something impersonal and inevitable, emphasizing the lack of power individuals have when influenced by abusive dictatorship. Orwell further explores the distortion of memory through Winston's reflection. If the past and external world exist only in the mind, and the mind itself is controllable, what then? Through the rhetorical question, what then? Orwell foregrounds the sinister fragility of autonomy under ideological power, personally prompting readers to consider the broader psychological implications of cognitive dissonance under totalitarian control. Fundamentally, Orwell's paradoxes portray the individual and collective human cost of political control, whereby power dictates truth in order to reduce memory into an instrument of repression.